consolidation and diversification, how Canadian firms can stay ahead in 2023.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you to the event organizers and to everyone attending. Yeah, I am Claire Brownell. I am a reporter at The Logic, and I cover the crypto sector, as people have been telling me this week so far, that it's one of the few keeping a dedicated eye on the sector in the country. And I'd like to introduce the panelists today. Dean Skurka is the CEO of WonderFi. Didier Lavallée is the CEO of Tetra Trust. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you, because WonderFi's story has really been, sort of the story of covering the speed. I've been on it since February of 2021. WonderFi is not a whole lot older than that. I think it was August when it went public in the reverse takeover. Here we are today, and it owns 4 of the registered crypto platforms in the country. I'm just interested to, Dean, hear what you think about, if somebody had a crystal ball and could have told you back in August of 2021, this is where you'd be today, what would you have thought about that?
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a good question. I don't think we'd expect to be this far from a regulatory perspective, and I think in many ways, the regulatory landscape in Canada, which is certainly unique compared to the rest of the globe, has allowed WonderFi to actually consolidate the industry the way it has so far. Providing clear regulation and having frameworks that companies like BitBuy, CoinSquare, and CoinSmart have to abide by makes it far easier from a M&A perspective to actually acquire these companies. As a public company, there's significant scrutiny that we're faced with when we pursue acquisitions like the ones we've completed recently. And the regulatory landscape has provided a lot of confidence to the market in Canada to allow these acquisitions to actually take place. And so I think it's been a net positive for the industry. We look at it as a starting point. I think a good example of that is how the initial orders that BitBuy received were for crypto trading exclusively. And through collaboration with the regulators, we were able to introduce a staking license as well last November that allows BitBuy to offer staking services to Canadians in a safe and compliant and regulated manner. And so to me, that demonstrates that the regulators in this country understand the industry, and they're looking to provide comfort and safety to the participants in that industry, not only through crypto trading, but through the other products and services that Canadians are looking to engage with.
Great, thank you. And yeah, Didier, you came here from RBC to Tetra Trust in 2022, I believe. What do you think about how you've seen things change since then? And would you have been surprised to know about where we are today when you first started here?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. My view is that it would have been inevitable at some point. I think regulation is good for the industry. Again, to Dean's point, I think the regulators are doing a good job. There's a lot of sometimes commentary around they should move quicker, they should adopt, broader products. But the reality is there is a framework. We can work within the framework. Like WonderFi Tetra, continues to pave the way. We are Canada's only licensed digital asset custodian. We have a special purpose trust license to do so. We're able to do custody of assets. Now we're able to offer staking services. We're the first custodian in the country to get that license. So again, a track record of being, kind of bringing new products, working with the regulators in a governed way, and releasing products for, our clients, the institutional providers, the trading platforms, ETFs like, 3IQ. But essentially doing it so in a regulated way, in a controlled way. So we think it's very positive, and we're very excited about what's to come. Yes, could it be quicker? Sure. Could they be more aligned? Yes. But I think overall things are going in the right direction.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I am curious to hear from you what Canada's crypto regulatory framework. What do you like about it, and what would you change about it if you could? Dean, I'll start with you.
Yeah, there's a long list there. I'll try and keep it brief. But I think, some of the more obvious examples of things that can be improved on would be some of the investment limits that have been established, and more so some of the tokens that do not have investment limits. I think those are areas that could be closely examined or maybe updated based on current market conditions. But I'd say the biggest thing, like in terms of the positives, is like the willingness of the regulators to work with us, recognizing that the industry is much greater than buying and selling digital assets. There's DeFi protocols, there's NFTs, there's staking, there's a lot of services that exist beyond the buying and selling of digital assets. And from a regulatory perspective, if they're not going to find the balance to allow Canadian platforms like ours to offer these services, these Canadian participants are just going to go offshore and find other venues to conduct this type of activity. And as we've seen with Celsius and Voyager and other examples, that imposes a ton of risk on Canadian participants. And so I think, one thing I'd like to see, and sort of to Didier's point, it's never fast enough. But I think through the staking example, there's clear willingness on their part to work with companies like ours to understand what the totality of the industry looks like from a regulatory compliant perspective, to have the components that the participants are looking for and to be able to offer them through platforms like BitBuy and CoinSquare in a compliant manner.
Great. And yeah, Didier, what things you like and one thing you would change if you could?
Yeah, things I like is the willingness to work with the industry and the engagement. I think, for a lot of the regulated players or the ones that are on the path through the PRU to get regulated, you really have good engagement from the regulators. So definitely one I like. I may say two things I would change. One is alignment. There's still a lot of confusions at times between the different provinces, the different federal regulators as to who is really the authority, and they try to regulate you in multiple ways. So that's, I would say, at times a little bit difficult to navigate because you don't ultimately know who you want to be listening to a certain extent. And then the second piece, would be continuing to really try to work with the industry to understand that this is a different thing than traditional financial services, right? There's still a lot of let's try to fit this into, or a square peg into a round hole, whatever you want to use in terms of phrasing. But at the end of the day, this is different. The companies are, starting up. They're startups. They don't have maybe at times the balance sheet than the big financial institutions. And we have to create a framework for the ecosystem to grow without making it too punitive based on, past experience. And Canada is very conservative, of course, on financial services, so we understand that. But those would be my two.
Great, okay, thank you. Something that's been a major theme in my reporting on this beat has been sort of a frustration that a lot of the domestic platforms has had with the regulatory gray area that some of the international platforms have been in. That's changed. You were talking about PRUs. That's a pre-registration undertaking for those of you who don't spend all their time reading Canadian Securities Administrators guidelines like we do. But yeah, so in March, platforms like Gemini, Coinbase, Kraken, they signed, it's basically an agreement to follow certain rules while they pursue registration. And I know some of the domestic platforms had some frustrations with the fact that, they were just continuing to operate without having that agreement in place, while the domestic platforms had to sign up with IROC, formerly IROC, now it's CRO. Basically we're following all these like strict securities dealer rules. So now that that era has kind of come to an end, what does that mean for Canadian platforms, Dean? What kind of opportunities does that present?
Yeah, I think it's great. A great indicator for platforms like ours to see. And when platforms like BitBuy and CoinSquare go through the regulatory process, there's significant barriers that they have to overcome. There's significant modifications to the business and the way it operates that they need to incorporate into the go-forward business itself. And all you can really ask for is at the end of that process to be part of a fair and balanced ecosystem. And for a while, you would see these large international platforms continue to operate, albeit in a relatively gray market fashion, with limited oversight or enforcement. And starting to see signs of that turning around this year. You've seen some pretty high-profile names either leave the market or sign up for PRUs, which creates a far more balanced ecosystem within the Canadian landscape specifically. And so I think that's a positive signal for companies like ours. It reinforces the reason and the justification for us to go through the registration process. And really for a platform like WonderFi, we see really the big picture in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, and we've always believed that regulation is a part of that and will allow us to grow through other products and services, and by being able to offer the services we offer today to a wider audience of clients.
Great, thanks. And yeah, Didier, I'm wondering what what this means for custodians in particular, particularly Tetra Trust. It's the only one that has that licensing in Canada to provide digital asset custodial services to financial institutions, to these platforms that are now registered. I guess, yeah. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think custody is actually an area where there could be more work done by the regulators, actually. There's still very much a gray area when it comes to custody. There's been more and more wording, if you're paying attention to the CSA, again, not everybody's probably reading those documentation, but they're pointing, to custody, and there's obviously a lot of jurisdictional risk that continues to exist in the ecosystem. So essentially employing custodians that are outside Canada or key management that's outside Canada, so that continues to create risk for, platforms, but also for underlying users. So I do believe that there's more to be done. Ultimately, the regulators will have to start moving also probably a little bit quickly, right? Because to Dean's point, if you're used to operate on an international platform that's offering you derivatives and whatnot, now they're shutting down, like the demand from the retail user is going to continue to be around. So, the regulators have to anticipate that, more of the regulated platform is going to start asking for more sophisticated products. And that's probably another area to look at as well.
Okay, great, interesting. So the consolidation is something that people have been predicting for some time in Canada, because there are a lot of crypto platforms out there. Back before the sort of regulation push started, I think tons and tons of them, like hundreds of them, registered as MSBs. And we're starting to finally see consolidation of some of them. WonderFi has been a big driver of that consolidation. With consolidation comes, pros and cons for customers. It can mean, less choice potentially. It can mean higher fees. I guess, what does consolidation mean for the retail customer, Dean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And obviously we've been quite involved or focused on the consolidation of this industry for the last year and a half. I think from a client perspective, in many respects, having too many platforms to choose from can actually be a problem in some respect. It makes it difficult to separate the platforms you can trust from the ones that maybe you should avoid. And so, consolidating these platforms, consolidating the offerings into one, easy to use, intuitive platform that has, retail products, institutional products, staking products. We think it's a net benefit to the retail and institutional client bases that we have collectively through our platforms. And, I think part of that is identifying the best pieces of the platforms we now own and operate and incorporating them into that final end state. And so, clients of CoinSmart, for example, will get the benefit of being able to stake when they're migrated into the BitBuy platform. And so, there's one example where, consolidation can actually be a benefit from a products and services standpoint to the retail audience by actually putting them into a platform that has more to offer and will continue to focus on products and features that they're looking for. So, to me, it would be a net benefit. It's, identifying one leader in this industry. There's many platforms to choose from, but you look at a platform like WonderFi, a publicly traded company, which brings a ton of transparency around the business and how we operate. Through the CoinSquare entity, we have the only and first of its kind IROC, now Zero, registered member firm. And so really for us, it's really all about transparency and client protection and really positioning our clients today and our future clients in a platform that they can trust, that provides transparency and continues to focus on the products and services that they're looking for.
Great, thanks. So I also want to talk about revenue diversification, which is part of WonderFi's strategy going forward. It's tough out there for crypto trading platforms. It has been for a while. The collapse of FTX, trading volumes are down since then. They haven't recovered. WonderFi has embarked on, I think, an interesting strategy of trying to, go out into different revenue streams. You have Tetra Trust, the custodian. You have CoinSmart, SmartPay. And maybe I'll direct this as you, Didier, as the person in charge of part of this revenue diversification strategy. I guess what do you make of that strategy, and what could other platforms potentially learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes tremendous sense, right? It's probably revenue diversification is probably one of the oldest strategy or business strategies in the world. Custody is actually a great place to start. What people don't understand is, once you have custody of the assets, there's so many additional products you can offer. I mean, you referred my old employer, we were selling something, cross-selling something like 30 odd products into our clients, right? Now there's a certain maturity to the industry, but the reality is once you own the client relationship and you own, kind of the client assets, there's a lot of services you can keep layering onto the custody. So we see it as the, kind of the foundational block in terms of revenue generation at Tetra. We're doing that ourselves, right? We are offering cash escrow services. We are offering staking services now on top of custody, and there's a lot more that we're excited about. But with, a partner like WonderFi, it makes obviously a lot of sense to their ecosystem, because now, they can leverage the Canadian tech that, Tetra has. They can leverage having their keys in Canada, and they can also start pushing more products through the Tetra entity.
Yeah, Dean, looks like you have something to add.
It's a great point that you bring up, and I think from a WonderFi perspective, when we acquired CoinSmart and CoinSquare, clearly those companies predominantly own and operate crypto trading platforms. So part of our consolidation strategy is really, bringing those business units in. But a byproduct of those acquisitions is CoinSmart's subsidiary, SmartPay, which is a B2B crypto to fiat payment processor that we now own and operate, is a clear example of the diversification strategy that we're looking to, embark on. And so that's a business that's, adjacent to crypto trading, but clearly, anchored in the crypto ecosystem, and payments is an area that we see tremendous upside and long-term growth with. And, similarly through the CoinSquare acquisition, the, significant ownership stake in Tetra is just another example of how, we're able to consolidate and diversify through these acquisitions. And then lastly, I'll just say, staking is another example of product diversification that we've seen tremendous success with. This year, we've seen over 450% growth in the dollars of value of assets staked on the platform. And so, through a product like SmartPay that has 12% month-over-month growth, through a product like staking, and through our, obvious synergies with Tetra, we're able to really diversify the business beyond the trading segment that will always remain at the core of our business as one of our core competencies. But through diversification, what we're able to accomplish is, a smoother revenue line going forward. And, anyone that, is involved in a crypto trading platform or involved in the industry, volatile, prices can mean volatile revenues for trading platforms. And in good years, that can be fantastic. And in, crypto winters, it can be more difficult. And so longer term, through SmartPay, through products like staking, and through investments in Tetra, we're actually able to see a path towards diversifying our revenues as as an overall percentage of trading revenues. And longer term, we see a much smoother revenue profile for our business, which I think, is healthy and what, from a public company perspective, investors are looking to see.
Great. So yeah, Dean, I'm hoping you can maybe talk a bit about some future planned revenue lines that you've talked about. I know you've talked about expanding into stock trading, potentially sports betting. You said that crypto is going to remain a core competency, but maybe talk about what that means and sort of the overall customer that you're looking to attract with that sort of offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we're always looking for the crypto-centric users, and catering to those users is our primary focus. With equities trading, that's something that we're able to do through our IROC 0 license with, through CoinSquare. And so that's something we're looking at quite closely. And, from that angle, we're looking at, is there a viable way where our clients can swap out of or into equities and into and out of crypto, and offer a really unique product that's, sort of driven in the, sort of like I said, the crypto ecosystem that we're, sort of focused on primarily, and then give them abilities to access equities trading as well. Obviously, we've seen platforms like Wealthsimple do a great job of starting with equities and moving into crypto trading. And, from us, primarily, we look at our users and the trading activity they're engaged with. They're interested in trading assets, and we think there's a path where that can be beyond crypto assets and into equities, as an example. Through the IROC license, other products and services that we're really focused on long term, would be margin and derivatives. To Didier's point, some of these platforms that have left the country or are now limited in what they can do in the country, that void isn't, necessarily filled organically if there's no one in Canada that can offer those services in a regulated environment. And so, we see a real opportunity there to work with regulators, again, like we have with staking and crypto trading in the past, to find the right balance and find the abilities in which we can offer margin and derivatives trading, in short order.
Great, okay, thanks. So you all have just been through a triple merger, which is very unusual. I've been asking around, M&A lawyers, like other business reporters, have you ever heard of a triple merger? And everyone's like, no, in my entire career, I've never, I've never worked on one, I've never reported on one. It's an unusual thing to do. What is it, Didier, you weren't exactly like, totally, it's a little bit different because you're sort of a company that we have an investment in. But anyway, what was it like watching all of that happen as it was coming together?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. We were very happy to be part of the WonderFi family. Again, there's a lot of synergies. There's a lot of different platforms that will transition their assets over to Tetra, and hopefully we make the ecosystem just better and stronger. I think ultimately, Dean's highlighted a few things, but the entity together makes a lot of sense, right? There's so many different verticals you can attack now. So, as a subsidiary of CoinSquare originally and now a subsidiary of WonderFi, we're obviously very excited because there's just a lot more behind the Tetra entity, right? Dean just highlighted a ton of products. Again, I'm a reform banker. I used to do custody infrastructure for equities. It's incredibly inefficient. It's very exciting for us and our team to think about how we could tackle a problem like solving equity custody. And of course, I have to be careful. There's probably regulators in the room. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more we can deliver to the overall kind of financial services in Canada. And it starts with strong partners like WonderFi, larger entities that can tackle bigger problems. So yeah, it's very exciting from Tetra's position.
Great, and Dean, if you were advising somebody else who was about to, shepherd through a triple merger, what would be a piece of advice you would give them?
I would encourage them to find a way to build up a ton of patience and think big picture and long term. All the way through the process, we were pretty confident that the sum of the parts together made a lot more sense than us, independently just continuing on. And just have to keep thinking about, the reasons why you're putting these companies together. I think the fact that the Canadian crypto ecosystem is quite small to begin with definitely helped, given the familiarity that, BitBuy had with CoinSquare and CoinSmart. These are people that we'd meet at Futurist conferences and obviously build relationships with over the years. And, really, ultimately what it came down to was the conviction that it was the right transaction to complete. That, like I mentioned, the sum of the parts gives the new company, the new entity, a really strong chance to succeed as the clear market leader in the space, for Canada. And, just sort of thinking about the right reasons and not getting bogged down in the politics and drama. I think a lot of that exists in a merger if it's two entities regardless. Layering on three, obviously a bit more challenging and complex, but really just thinking big picture and the reasons why you got into the discussions in the first place were, very helpful for me at least in terms of just maintaining, my patience, like I mentioned, and moving forward.
Great, okay, thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I'm just curious to ask both of you, the last 2 years have been such a wild ride. If we're sitting here again in 2 more years, what are your, where will we be at that point? What are your predictions for where WonderFi will be and where the sector will be? Didier, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm hoping for a continued regulated framework with open-minded regulators that allow us to continue to push product development and a larger, more stable ecosystem.
Dean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. Like you said at the beginning of this, 2 years ago, it'd be hard to predict, being here today and, seeing the industry grow the way it has. I think being in the industry over the last 5.5 years, it'd be hard to imagine, the growth that we've actually seen, the adoption that's taken place. When I joined back in 2018, the conversation was, should Bitcoin be outlawed, in certain jurisdictions? And now, Canada's a leading example from a regulatory perspective. You're starting to see regulation, dialogue and advancement take place in areas like the U.S. and other, core markets that will be a driver for, things to continue to grow going forward. And so, it's hard to really, predict what things look like even a year out in this industry. But, certainly as regulation in Canada, becomes more formalized and established, I think to Didier's point, more products and services, a lot of these products and services that Canadians are looking for anyways, and potentially already engaging with offshore entities to conduct some of those, engage with some of those products and services. And so I think, continued collaboration with the regulators to focus on new products. We were talking about it earlier. There doesn't seem to be a lot of startup companies in the industry really coming out of Canada. It'd be great to see regulation find a way to sort of address that. And that's it.
All right, great. Well, I look forward to talking to you about this again in 2 more years. And thank you very much to both of you, and thanks to everybody who attended.